Sarah Marie. I'm the face behind Sara Lucille Handmade, and today I want to teach you guys all about the traditional technique of hand piecing. And it's a technique I learned from my grandma Lucille, and this is the quilt she made for me. She made many of these all by hand, and she taught me how to do it. So today I'm going to teach you how to piece these cute little hexagons together, and let's get started. Let's talk about supplies. So what you're going to need for hand piecing is right here. You are going to need a template. This is an acrylic template. This is a 2-inch hexagon, and it came in a pack with I think one smaller size, a 1-inch, and a 3 and a 4. And so you can decide which size you like best. This is on the smaller side, but I find that it's great to use up my scraps. And you could also have the option of using other mediums. So this is acrylic. You can trace a template onto cardstock or cardboard, which is what Grandma Lucille did, and it works fine, and it keeps all your pieces the same size. So you're just going to want to have a template that's going to be consistent. You want all your pieces to be the exact same size. A needle, I use a embroidery size, I think it's a 3 or 4. They're pretty similar, and it's small and it's sharp, and you don't want it to be too long because you're working with such a small piece, small pieces of fabric. So just play around with some different embroidery type needles and see what works best for you, like what's comfortable, and that will be what you will probably gravitate towards. You're going to need some small scissors, an acrylic ruler to mark your fabric, 100% cotton thread. This is Gutermann brand, which I love, but anything 100% cotton is great. Some really nice shears. These are my Eversewn shears, love them. A number 2 pencil, which we will mark our fabric. I know it sounds scary, but it's all going to be fine, I promise. And then some fabric, and these are just some fun ones I pulled out of my stash today. Really, you can pick anything. You can pick a fat quarter bundle. You can go through your scraps and find pieces that are this big and just use up those scraps. I mean, I bet we all have a ton of fabric sitting in our sewing room that's not big enough for a traditional quilt. So gather some of these. You probably have a lot of these already in your home. If not, get these supplies, get some gorgeous fabric, pick some out. That's the fun part. And then come on back and we'll start marking our shapes on our fabric. All right, let's start marking our fabric. So we have our fabric, we'll have it pressed ready to go. You'll get your pencil, your template, and your shears on hand. And you're just going to line up your template right on the edge of your fabric. Make sure that it's not going over the edge on the corner. And to utilize your fabric, make sure it's pretty close on all sides. And then you're just going to mark with your pencil all the way around, like so. Okay. And then you have your shape. Now, to utilize the fabric and not waste as much as we can help wasting, we will just line up this edge with the edge on top here. And you see how those are flush? And just hold that in place and continue on. And mark your next one. And then I like to just nest my next piece right in here. So these lines are up against the lines you already made. And make another one. Like that. So we've got 3. And I don't quite have enough on this side, so I'm going to just keep on going upwards. So I'll do one right here as well. Okay, and then once you've marked your lines on here, you get your shears, and hopefully you can see all right. you've got your lines, and you're just going to cut along those lines. So basically those pencil marks are just going to be cut off. You're going to cut along here. Make sure not to go over. And I've tried to do this with a small rotary blade, and it doesn't really work. What happens is you end up not getting these crisp corners, which you do need. So use shears. I know it feels a little tedious, but you'll get better shapes that way. And you know, it's your preference whether you want to cut out all the fabric you need from each color before you even start sewing. I tend to do it in batches, so I'll cut out enough for one flower shape, which is 1 center piece, 6 in the second ring, and then 12 in the outer ring. So I'll cut out enough to make one, and then I will sew those together, and then I'll go to the next one. But however you want to do it is fine. So just cut these really straight. So you'll go ahead and finish this with all 6 of, I'm doing 6 of this color, however many you need, and then we'll move on to marking. All right, so we've cut out all our hexagons, and this is going to be my middle circle. So I have 6 of these, and we are going to mark the lines that we will sew. So you'll need a ruler, an acrylic ruler, and a hero marker. Now this little tool is amazing. What it does is it basically marks lines that are invisible. And if you haven't used one of these before, I highly recommend it. It's by Clover. Anyway, so we are going to mark a 1/4 inch seam on each side of our hexagon. So just line up your 1/4 inch with the edge of the piece. And then with your hair marker, you do want to push down fairly hard if you want to get a nice visible line. And there you can see is my line, and that's the line that I will sew along as I'm sewing my pieces together. And it makes everything so much better because nothing gets wonky or out of whack. So you just go around and have this fun spinny mat, but you go around and you just mark a 1/4 inch on each side of the hexagon. And you'll do this with all your pieces. So this is something you can do in batches or one at a time. If you just have all your supplies in front of you, you can do them one at a time. Or you can mark a bunch of them and then sew a bunch and then kind of go back. So yeah, this hand piecing is, I'm just gonna make this line a little bit darker. Super therapeutic and fun. So your piece should look like this when you're done. It should have all your lines marked on the inside, and these will be your sewing lines right along each line here. So let's move on to sewing. So marking our fabric, we will have our cut out pieces like so. We will have a ruler of some kind and a hair marker. This little tool is pretty amazing. This one is by Clover, and it has kind of a sharp-ish side, but it's not very sharp. And then just a handle on the other. And what it does is it makes kind of like a crease in the fabric. So there's no actual marking, and when you wash your fabric, it's gone. The crease is gone, just like, a fold or something like that. So this is a great way to mark without leaving any pen or mark or wondering if it's going to wash out. So I love to use this tool, but you can use like a washable marker or whatever your preference is. So we are going to do a 1/4 inch seam on all of our hexagons. So line up your 1/4 inch seam with the edge of your hexagon there and just push down
with your hair marker and mark a line. And I'll show you up close. It makes this little crease. And that's the line you're going to sew along. So this is this makes our line super, super straight without having to kind of guess. So what you do is just go all the way around each piece and do, again, a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just like that. And if you're using a hair marker, you do have to push down kind of hard. You want to make those really visible. And again, just like anything else in this process, you can do it in batches or you can do all of them at once. It's kind of a great thing to do, sit and watch a show and just mark your line. So there's our marked up hexagon, and you're just going to do all of them that you want to work with, your batch that you're working with, or all of your pieces with these lines, and then you'll be ready to sew. All right, we're finally ready to actually start sewing our pieces together, which is the fun part. So you'll have your little handy shears next to you, so you can grab them when you need to. Get some thread your needle, and you'll have your centerpiece, which in this case I'm using a really pale pink, which is Art Gallery Fabric Sweet Macadamia. And then this floral print will be my next row outward as I build my flower. So you're gonna need one of these center pieces and 6 of these second row that goes around. And if you have that ready and marked, you can get started. So you're gonna put your pieces right sides together. And I like to do a little test to make sure that they're in the right place. So just make a simple knot on the end of your thread. I just wrap it around my index finger, roll it off my finger with my thumb, and then pull. Okay, so these are right sides together, and you see this intersection where your 2 marked lines meet up. So you're gonna put your needle in there. But don't go all the way yet. So just poke it in there and then flip it over and check to see if on the other side the needle's going through the same intersection. And in this case, it looks spot on. So that means I can start sewing. Just make sure that the lines at the top stay lined up and grip with your left hand. If you're left-handed, speaking of, you'll just start on the left and work your way in a clockwise direction. Right-handed people, you will move counterclockwise, okay? So we are going to just make a small little stitch, just like that. Pull it through, okay? And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna put your needle back in just a tiny bit to the left of your knot, and then come out a tiny bit to the left of where that first stitch ended. Just like that. Okay, pull that through. Okay, now you don't want to pull too tight because that'll cause your fabric to bunch up, but you do want it to be snug. Okay, then you just repeat. You're going to go in a little bit to the left of the last stitch and a little bit further to the left of where you last came out, just a titch over. And then you just continue on. And this isn't like a standard back stitch, but it's kind of a variation on it. Just a bit to the left, and you don't want a lot of space in between those stitches because then you'll have gaps when you open it up. Just right to the left of where your last stitch was. And as you go, my grandma was always like, the back should look as good as the front, so just double check that you're going along that line, that marked line on both sides. Okay, and again, not too tight, just nice and snug. I'm just gonna work your way until you get to that intersection on the other side. And then once you get there, I'm almost there, you will get to that corner. So your last stitch should be right in that corner. Okay. And then I like to do a few stitches just getting my way back to that end. So you just keep going back into the last spot with a few shorter stitches, if that makes sense. I'm gonna do one more. Okay, and then you just make a knot. So you're gonna put your needle underneath that last stitch, put the needle through this hole, and pull. Okay, my needle's about to come off. The thread's about to come off the needle. Okay, so you have one piece sewn together, and then you're just going to add. So I just keep working on this back, the center piece. I don't cut my thread. I'm going to continue moving in a counterclockwise direction. Again, left-handers, you're going opposite. So just grab another piece, line it up, just like you did before. Check your placement. Looks pretty good. Okay, make sure they're lined up, and then continue stitching. And just those small stitches again. Just a titch to the left. And you're gonna go and repeat that all the way around, adding pieces as you go. So you'll add a piece for each side, and you'll go all the way till you get back to where you started, okay? Okay, we're back. If you sewed all the way around, you'll have this really wonky looking flower. And so your back should look like this. You've gone all the way around this centerpiece, and you have 6 hexagons attached, but as you can see, they're kind of just floating around, super wonky. So the next step is to sew them to each other. So pick one to start with, and you're gonna kind of fold your piece in half. So the center piece kind of ends up just folding itself in half. And you line these up with one another, and just as best you can. Sometimes things aren't exactly lined up, and that's okay, because it all works out in the end. Okay, so it should look like this. You're kind of folded in half here. All right, so just get your needle, make your knot, and we will sew these sides together. So what you're gonna do is the same thing. With this center piece folded and 2 of the sides lined up, you're gonna go right in where your stitches are, okay? So the stitches are more important than your marked lines. Hopefully they're the same, but if they're not, you wanna go where the stitches are. And you wanna go where the stitches are on the back as well. So I'm gonna just try and get right where those stitches end so I don't have a hole in this corner, okay? You see that? Okay, so I hope you can see all right. All right, and then you do the same thing. You're gonna stitch along this edge to bring these sides together. And in the corners, I kind of like to go back right where my knot is a few times just to kind of, you know, anchor that corner there. Okay, sometimes too you can, see how this is kind of not quite lining up here, but we want it to line up on the other side, so just kind of check your placement on the backs on the other side. Line up those corners there, and then work your way over to kind of even it all out. So just do your same little wonky back stitch. And again, small stitches. Don't pull too tight. So I'll show you what happens. If I pull really tight, it just kind of tightens up the fabric and it makes it bunch. It's no bueno. So, okay. So you can just kind of pull it out, loosen it up a little bit. Okay, here we go. Back on track. So work your way again to the corner on the left. All right. And make a knot. And then I'll show you what it looks like. So you should have a nice corner there. And you will do this all the way around. So you'll do it, you'll attach these to each other, then you'll attach the next ones, and you'll just go around until you have a nice little flower. So go get that step done and then come back and we will add our third row, okay? Okay, if you're sewing along with me at this point, you should have a small little flower block. Aren't they so adorable? So you've got your center piece, and these lines are just here because I've been folding my fabric to sew these seams. So you may see those lines there. It's totally fine. And then you've got your first row, and this should have 6 pieces. And now we're going to move on to our second row, which is the row that's going to just go around, and there will be 12 hexagons in the second row. There's 6 in the first row, 12 in the second row. All right. Now I'm right-handed, so I want to find a spot where I can sew from right to left and start where there's already a seam. Okay. So right here, I have a seam that ended here. I'm just going to snip this little tail off. And if I add my second row piece, right sides together, like this, then I can sew from right to left. And I start right here where my seam ended. If you have the second row piece facing you, then what happens is if you start out here where there's no seam, you may or may not line up in the end to where you've already got your seam ending. And then things get kind of out of whack. So you always want to start where you have already sewn and you have a little corner to start at. If you're left-handed, find a spot where the seam ends and you can work from left to right, like that side, okay? So I'm going to line up these pieces, make sure all the edges and corners line up, just like that. I'm going to take my threaded needle, I already have a knot in it, and I'm just going to go in right where I ended this row, this line, okay? Okay. And you can check, see my stitch is right on that marked line, so I'm good there. Okay, and then it's the same process of stitching. And as you can see, I kind of hold my piece tightly with my left thumb and forefinger to make sure that these stay lined up properly as I sew. Because what can happen is if you're not holding them tightly together, they can start to go like this, and then your seam lines don't line up, and then your shapes aren't quite the right shape when you're done. And once you finish this side, what you'll do is you'll open this up, you'll fold it down, so see how it's here? This side needs to be sewn on, so you'll just line those up. Again, the same idea, like folding it, and you'll start from that corner and move outward. So let's get that far, and then I'll come back and show you the next step, okay? All right, now we have one piece on here in this corner. What I like to do is add a piece to each corner where it has like two sides to attach. So you'll kind of fill in here and here and here, there and there. So you'll fill in these corners, and then see how you'll have these like just one side. You'll do those last. So you'll fill in the corners first. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in each corner. And then we'll add the flat sides at the end. So go ahead and sew in your corner pieces, and then come back and we'll do one of these side pieces, okay? Okay, so I did 2 corner pieces so I could show you the one side piece. So you're just gonna put that right sides together, line it up as best you can. You may have to pull these side pieces away a little bit to kind of see what you're doing. And again, you're always gonna sew where you can see your seam. So you're gonna sew with your row 1 piece facing you. And you know, got your needle. You're just gonna do your test. Make sure you're in the corner there. You can see that. Okay, and then sew along here. When you get to this corner, you're just gonna keep going there, and then you'll not flip around and sew along that edge, if that makes sense. So sew along here, make a knot, come back, and you'll actually sew on this side because you'll have your seam here. So you'll fold your piece and sew along that side, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna sew these 2 sides, and then I'll show you the 3rd side, okay? Okay, so I've done 2 sides. I sewed along here, and then I continued on, sewed along there. Then you're gonna flip around and fold just like you did before. Fold these 2 sides together. Find where your seam ends, and just sew along there to make that third side. So just right in the corner, same thing, and you'll just sew along there, and you'll do that for each remaining edge piece. Once you've done your corners, you'll have 6 edge pieces to do that. Each need to be sewn on 3 sides. All right. All right, so we're back, and hopefully you guys are at a point where you've created one flower. And you can see how wrinkly mine is, and this is the back. So I'm going to show you how to press this so that you get everything really nice and flat instead of all buckled up like this. So you want to start in the center and work your way out. So you can do this when you have, you know, a piece like this done, or you can wait until the entire quilt is finished. It's totally up to you. I actually like to wait until the entire quilt is finished because then everything kind of works out as you move out from the center of the quilt. All the seams will line up, if that makes sense. So we'll just show you on this small piece, but you can do it however you like. So I'm going to pick a seam. So I'm going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see this center here one. I'm going to move all of these seams in the same direction. So 2 of them are already going this way. I'm going to push this one. And what will happen is you'll get like a little mini shape there in the middle. And all you're going to do is you're just going to press that down so that stays. Okay, so now we're already going this way. We're going to continue on and go this way again with these seams. So this one's going in that direction. And just press that. So, and then this one's going that way. So you kind of open those up. So you see how we're kind of getting a flatter block as the seams kind of spiral around each other. So here, so this one's going this way, so I just want all these to always go the same direction, these 3 seams that are around the center. Now you can spritz with water if you like. You can use best press or starch. You can use a tailor's clapper, whatever your preference is. So see, this one's already going this way and this way. I'm gonna spiral those around and press. So I've done all of these here around the center hexagon. Okay, and then you just continue that process. So now this one's going this way, I'm gonna spiral around this seam here and press that. And then move. So this is going this way. Press, so if that makes sense, you just do each seam around the edge and you just kind of, whatever one's already pressed, you just follow that one. And let me show you the front really quick, just what we've done so far. So you can see how now it's like really nice and flat, and you can press it on the front too once you've gotten everything done. And this center one's kind of wrinkly, so I probably will spray that at some point, but you'll just continue around. So let's see, this one's going this way, so we're gonna go this way. Sometimes I've kind of pressed them already just because my iron was on top of them. So you just kind of have to switch it. There you go. That is how you spin your seams to get a nice flat block once you've done all your hand piecing. See that? Doesn't that look so nice? And there you have it. All right, so once you're all finished, this is what the back will look like. And you can see at each point, the seams are going in the same direction, and they kind of alternate back and forth, and it just creates this nice flat back. And then on the front you can see how now it lays the way it should, and you can see the flower perfectly. So that's how you press. And again, I like to do it when the quilt's completely finished, because then the seams continue on in the right directions. And you don't have any spots where you're trying to go in the opposite direction, if that makes sense. So yeah. I am so glad you came and learned this hand piecing technique with me. This is the finished pattern that I was working on as I did this tutorial, and this is called Willoughby's Wildflowers. This is a baby size quilt. And the pattern for this is on my website, SaraLucilleHandmade.com. And it's a great pattern. It has diagrams and pictures and everything. And I hope you really enjoyed doing this technique. And it's such a traditional, fun thing to learn. And I am glad that you found me, and I hope you'll come back and learn more with me. I'll have lots more tutorials here on my YouTube page in the future. So thanks again. I've loved having you here with me.